Sometimes change doesn't come from a plan, it comes from a breaking point. When the world shut down in 2020, Crystal was a regional director at a local organization here in town.
I was a regional director when COVID hit, and we decided that it was time for me to look at a different avenue.
That decision led her to something unexpected, being in a small bedroom, a laptop, and a quiet belief that she could build something of her own.
And I looked at private practice and started my own business from a small bedroom in my house and a laptop back in 2020.
She didn't overthink it, she just jumped in.
I tend to jump in head first and see if I can sink or swim.
But growth is not always easy, and the pressure of helping others while building a business forced her to face her own limits.
The stress of that caused me to obtain my own therapist during that time frame so that I could ensure that I was giving my best to my clientele.
Like many professionals, she realized that passion alone isn't enough.
A lot of therapists, and including myself, we go to school and we do not learn the business side of anything.
And yet, she figured it out one step, one client, and one conversation at a time.
It grew faster than I was expecting, but it was a good growth.
Now she no longer is just building a caseload, she's building an organization.
My plan is to really transition from building a caseload to building an organization. I want to be able to open up other Crystal's counseling locations.
Her advice to anyone standing where she once stood:
do it, don't wait, even if it's just small. Being okay on a laptop and a prayer.
This is Florida Unscripted, and today I will be diving into Crystal's story. All right, Crystal, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and just kind of how you got into counseling.
My name is Crystal. I am a licensed mental health counselor for the state of Florida. I grew up in Vermont and moved to Florida in 2009 to relocate for a job in Gainesville. From there, I decided to obtain my licensure here in Florida, and I was a regional director at an organization here in town when it hit, and we decided that it was time for me to look at a different avenue. And I looked at private practice and started my own business from a small bedroom in my house and a laptop back in 2020.
You started from that into getting your actual space.
Yeah.
So what did you do in Gainesville, if you don't mind me asking?
So I was a therapist up in Gainesville working with children who were in foster care.
Okay.
I've worked with teenagers a majority of my career. And then when I transitioned to private practice, I realized that online counseling wasn't the best for teenagers for me to connect with them. So I ended up transitioning to the adult population. And that's who I currently work with.
Yeah, was that a big transition?
Yes. Yeah, because I really enjoyed working with the teenagers.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely a lot different. My mom was she still is a licensed social worker, but she worked with our children and families, so she kind of dealt with the same demographic that you dealt with. It's definitely not a job for the weak at heart. It's a lot.
Not. Yep.
It's a lot to deal with. So what are the differences that you've seen between doing private practice and, when you worked for like some organization?
Differences are, I think, the clientele that are walking through the door. A lot of individuals that I worked with in the community setting were either mandated or they didn't really have an option of coming into care. It was because they were maybe in foster care that services were offered, where in private practice, individuals are coming here because they want to or they choose to. So it's a different mindset when they're walking through the door.
Yeah, people that are, with adults, you're not really having people that are really forced to come here.
Yep.
With teenagers, they're being forced, either by the parent or by the state. Somebody's making them do that. So why did you actually end up choosing this career choice?
I have always been in the helping profession. Even when I was little, my mom ran a homeless shelter in Vermont. So I would sit at the table while she would provide the intake information and gather information from the individuals that were walking through the door. And I identified that back then I could help, even if it was just with the children, like getting them out, getting them, acclimated to what living in a shelter would look like. And from there, it just kind of progressed. And I just found myself always wanting to help the individuals that were really struggling.
Yeah, because it's definitely not, like I said, it's not a job for the faint of heart. It can be a lot, especially early on.
Yes.
Like a lot of times people don't, you don't start out in private practice. You have to work your way up, and a lot of people don't always make a lot of money doing those jobs. My mom didn't make a lot of money.
No, you don't.
It's a lot of stress for a whole lot of not a lot of money.
Yep.
That's why a lot of people don't stay.
That is accurate. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's an intense job, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
So I know mental health is probably like one of the most trending topics that is like circulating around for a number of reasons, between whether it is all the tragedies that we've had recently, or just, I think, between like the screens and phones and things like that. So what do you really like define as mental health? Let's start there.
I define it as anyone who may need someone to talk to. I identify it not as a struggle, as more of a need. So everyone needs someone. And if that's a therapist, if that's a friend, if that's someone that they can talk to on a weekly basis, that's what I define it as, so that we're not lumping or putting people into categories. That's how I think about it, because I think everybody needs someone, especially with the world that's happening around us. It's hard to identify someone that you could really talk to without having that bias or having that maybe misunderstanding of whether it be political or not. Counseling provides that opportunity where there is no judgment. You can come in as you are and you leave hopefully better.
I think it's important because I feel like we like lump the mental health term all over the place, and it just gets thrown around. Yeah. And so, I feel like it's one of those things that we don't really define very well of what that really means. Is it that you're crazy, or is it that you just need somebody? Right. Like exactly, what is that? Most people would say that we live in a world where most people are having some type of mental health issues, which I think I would agree with that. And I could think of a number of reasons as to why, but I figured I would ask you what your thoughts are on that. Well, specifically, the question is, what do you think is really causing people to have, like, the large amount of people having mental health type issues, whether that be anxiety, depression, loneliness, all the above?
It's many different factors. I think social media, having screens, is a big struggle sometimes. I think other people's opinions and their mindset could also be struggles on both sides. I wish I could pinpoint it. I wish it was cookie cutter, but it's not. It's across the board. I know, when COVID hit, it was a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of the unknown. And I think that trickles into what we see now, is that the world has a lot of unknowns, and a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people struggle with not being able to control situations, and I think that's a big piece too, where the lack of control is very scary, and that causes some anxiety.
I would think that would be a big thing, Yeah. I get that. I think COVID really definitely set a lot of people off, or set them on a spiral, or really affected them, and I think we're just really feeling the ramifications of that. We lived in such isolation for so long, at least some people did. They, out of fear or whatever the case is. And, you get into those habits, and they're very hard to break. Yes. Now, I know a lot of times people talk about, like you mentioned, social media, which I feel like a lot of people pinpoint that they talk about social media's effect on children and maybe teenagers, but it's not something they really talk about adults and the effect on that. Yep. What do you think would be the effect on an adult versus a kid, maybe?
Well, somebody that is more isolated, it allows them to have that connection that they may not have. So that's been a big thing, especially with the AI that has come out in the Chat GPT. That's been a huge factor in that connection piece, because they have someone or something to talk to that talks back. That's been a huge for a lot of adults that struggle to get out, struggle to go to the grocery store, struggle to even make connections when they're out and about, and may not have any type of family to connect with.
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, even myself, trying to make friends sometimes, I'm a pretty sociable person. I don't mind talking to people, but it can be, there's a level of you're a weirdness to just talk to somebody sitting at a bar, or talk to somebody sitting, in a room, or when you're at the grocery store or whatever. You do, if I talk to people, it sometimes, it can go two of either ways. It can go really well, or you really get a really dirty look and disgust look, and I'm what is wrong with you? I'm just saying hello. I'm definitely not one of those people that can't take that, but if you were somebody that couldn't, it would be very disheartening. I couldn't imagine that.
And it happens more often than not, especially as an adult. It's hard to make connections. It's very different in school when you're a child, when you're growing up, because there isn't a lot of the adult barriers.
It's also not seen as weird, I guess, either.
Correct.
Because you're in a classroom with them, and you've seen them, and it is a big struggle. I know a lot of people that I know, it was funny, we were in Tampa actually St. Pete this past weekend, and I was walking past these two young women. They were probably my age or a little bit older, and they were talking about how they're trying to make friends, and they like went on like a friend date, I guess you could say, and they were like, it was so awkward, it was so weird, and I left and I was like, we have to do this again.
Yeah.
Like, it's just...
Yep, it's so true.
It was really funny, and I was like, I do feel that. Like, sometimes I go and talk to people, and I'm just like, I don't think this went very well. This was really awkward and weird. Okay, moving along. Let's try the next person.
Yep.
But it's definitely different. I feel like my grandparents didn't struggle as much as we do today via whether it's social media or whatever the case is. I definitely think that it's a problem.
It is.
What do you like recommend for people to kind of like overcome those barriers?
Just continue to get out there, continue to try. Know that somebody's reaction is not a reactionary of you specifically or that person specifically. It's something going on internally for the other person. So if there's a reaction, let them have a reaction. You don't have to respond or have it be something that's about you or that person that went to them.
Yeah, sometimes.
It's tough.
Yeah, no, it is. I think for me, I personally just view those people as they have their own issues going on, and we just kind of have to move along and hope that they get into a better mental space themselves. Now, do you think the dopamine addiction part like might play a role into why people feel more like let down when they don't have those good experiences? I think that plays a role.
I'm not sure if it would be the dopamine reaction, more so as wanted to feel connected.
Okay.
Wanted to have that true either friendship, connection, ability to fit in, which may be related to the dopamine, but
I guess for me, I'm really pointing at like instant gratification.
Yeah, I think every human person wants to be liked and wants to fit into something or someone. And I think social media really pushes that because you can go on any type of app and fit in. You can find a niche and you can find people that you connect with. It doesn't mean that they're real humans right in front of you. And that makes it a little bit more difficult when you're out in the real world and you want to interact with a human and they may not have the same interests or likes.
No, I know you mentioned AI, and I recently saw a study talking about, I think that it's like one in every 15, what was it? I think it was like 15. I think it was like a crazy number, have tried and flirted with AI. And I thought, and you were talking about that, we're kind of going into a new age where social media has its own issues, but I think AI is going to develop into its own. Where do you kind of think maybe that's going to go, some issues that may occur? I'm just curious to see your perspective on AI's effect, like what the effect it's going to have on people that you think anyway.
So I don't know a whole lot about the AI realm. I know that I've worked with some individuals that use AI as a connection. Even when we're not meeting, they'll use the AI app to help them when they're struggling. That seems to be beneficial from what I'm seeing from a clinical standpoint. As for what happens longer term, I'm not sure. I can't speak on that. I think that everything kind of has its ups and downs, and we'll have some barriers as they come through. I know that there's some struggles happening with the AI and individuals that have used that for not the right reasons that have been publicized. So yeah, I think that we're going to see maybe more of some of the barriers.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. It is also interesting that you are seeing at least some positive outturn, where versus I know there recently unfortunately was a child who committed suicide because AI assisted them in that, which is definitely not okay. That was definitely a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm also very intrigued to see where that goes, and also the whole robot girlfriend, that whole thing to me is just very interesting. In other countries it is more common. It's definitely something that they're already been dealing with. Yeah. But I think here in the US it's definitely it's something new for us.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It definitely is going to be interesting to see kind of how that all goes. So I did want to ask a little bit more about your business. So I know, you started out doing your own thing, and then now you have your own private practice, and so kind of how has your business evolved through the years? I know we kind of talked about that, but I know you have some exciting things that you're doing.
I did start solo in 2020 out of a bedroom in my house when everything was telehealth. And then I slowly realized within about 6 to 8 months of doing that I could no longer see the amount of clientele that were being referred. And I was seeing people from not only Florida, but nationwide. I had people overseas. And I ended up contacting other therapists that I had worked with in the past to see if they would be interested in coming on board. And I hired 2 therapists contractually, and they helped kind of aid in taking some of the referrals that were coming through the door. And that helped kind of branch out a little bit more. When their caseloads became full, I realized that we really did have a niche. And I started to transition my thought process of this is a solo practitioner practice into how do I build a group practice? How do I ensure that everybody, or as many people in the state of Florida or nationwide, because it was still during COVID, could have services readily available, and how could I hire the best staff to be able to provide that? Because I can only provide so much, and building a business, it takes a lot out of an individual that also is trying to see clients as well. So that really transitioned my mindset of how do I build? How do I get the referrals? How do I get the staff? And what does that look like? So I guess COVID kind of lifted and everything went back to what normal is now. We decided that we were going to branch out and start to build connections. So I attended networking events here in Marion County, trying to build the name of Crystal's Counseling so that we again could reach more individuals. I was hiring more staff, and then in March of last year is when the office space became available. So we opened up the office. That brought in more clinicians. Right now I'm sitting at 16 therapists and I guess an office space that holds a majority of them.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So yeah, it is. Yeah, it grew faster than I was expecting, but it was a good growth.
I know getting that many people on can be really stressful. How have you been, how have you dealt with those stressors and just kind of being okay with the bumps along the way?
Well, how did I deal with the stress? I tend to jump in head first and see if I can sink or swim. The stress of that caused me to obtain my own therapist during that time frame so that I could ensure that I was giving my best to my clientele, because I still ran a full-time caseload and all the staff that I was bringing on board. So that was really beneficial to kind of iron out from not only a therapist standpoint, but now a business owner. A lot of therapists, and including myself, we go to school and we do not learn the business side of anything. It's, this is how you run a caseload, this is how you interact with an individual. So that was a huge learning curve for me, is how do you run a business, and then how is it successful so that we can continue to grow. So those are some of the barriers that we kind of hit throughout the way. We do bill all major insurances for the state of Florida, so that was a huge feat in building the business, but it has some challenges as well. Insurance sometimes struggles to provide payment for services that are rendered, so that's been a lot of the bumps along the way, and insurance isn't as quick as you would think that it would be. You're typically about a month out from when you first see a client to even thinking about getting the first payment. So it's a lot of floating the staff and everything that we have business-wide. So that's a different thing that I think, talk to therapists about if they're thinking about building a practice, especially a group practice, and then doing insurance-based billing, what that looks like and how to ensure that the overhead is secure before taking on that fee.
Yeah, no, definitely insurance it's not that easy to deal with. It's very difficult.
It is not.
That's why most people don't, they do it where you just pay for it because they don't want to deal with insurance, which I get. I mean, everybody wants their money up front. They don't want to have to deal with all the rigmarole of what that goes into, and I totally respect that. I know you were talking about if somebody was looking to build to do what you're doing, what were some things that you maybe would tell them to do ahead of time instead of at the back end, which I'm sure you probably did. A lot of people do that, especially in the beginning. You're like pulling your hair, like, I wish I would have done this in the beginning.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would have done was not build as quickly as I did, because again, I think with the insurance piece, it was a big undertaking. It took about 6 months from the moment that we started filling out the application to the acceptance, where we were seeing clients knowing or hoping that they would retroactively actively pay. So that was a big thing that I would not recommend for a lot of business owners. I would ensure that the insurance is secure before doing that. I'm also helping clinicians in the state of Florida build their own business. I've helped a couple already on what that looks like kind of behind the scenes, so that they're not hopefully dealing with some of the struggles that I dealt with. So that's something that from a business standpoint, I'm offering other clinicians here. And that's been really beneficial because it allows the clinicians to really understand the business piece, which again, we're not taught. There isn't, as far as I'm aware, at least I was never taught a business mentality. I didn't go to business school. I don't have a business degree, but I run a very successful business just by trial and error and jumping in.
I know. I definitely get that. You know, I went to school to be a dietitian, so I'm not a dietitian, but I did go to school for that. Yeah. And you know, it's kind of similar where I know there's a dietitian in town that I know, and he was talking about that when I interviewed him, and he was like, nobody ever taught us like how to do anything in business. Mm-hmm. And I was very fortunate, actually. My dietetics program did kind of talk about that. She actually brought some people in from SCORE and really did try to like help us understand, if we decided we wanted to do this on our own, you know, what that would look like, what practice could look like, all those details, which I thought was really great. So I guess there's hope that maybe these colleges are, you know, are starting to kind of be like, you know, if somebody wants to do this on their own, how can we help them be successful? Which is exciting. Yeah. I like to see that. You know, owning a business is not for everybody, but if that's what you want to do, you know, why not start off the bat, you know, go work for a couple of years, and then you can be more prepared for that.
Absolutely.
What would you say have been some of the biggest resources that you've used to kind of help you, whether that be, you know, it could be a person, a book, or something?
Networking, especially here in Marion County. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That was my biggest push and biggest build with the organization and the business. Had I not been in the networking groups that I was part of, I can't guarantee that my name would have been promoted as it has been and continues to be. Book-wise, I read a lot of self-help books just because of what I do. One that I recommend for therapists is Profit First for therapists, because again, it kind of goes into that business model from a financial standpoint. A majority of clinicians that start out do not have typically a CPA or a business financial coach, so that was a huge book that I recommend for a lot of clinicians, because it is a different way of thinking about the finances. Because again, when I jumped in, I was like, okay, look at all the money. And then I was like, wait, no, not all of this is mine. So that was a different mindset.
Yeah, no, it definitely can be. It's just a lot to deal with, especially in the beginning when you just jump in. Yeah. So how's it been so far being a business here in Marion County?
It's been really good. Knock on something, Marion County has really opened up and welcomed Crystal's counseling into many different facets. It's not just for people that are struggling outwardly with mental health. It's business owners, it's individuals that have stress, it's children in the mainstream school system, it's employees, it's, you know, across the board. We're really trying to open up and help everyone, and a lot of Marion County has been able to refer because of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome, especially when you said you have 16. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a little bit of somebody that does something, a little bit of everything. Yep. You know, if it's not your specialty, it's somebody else also, so that definitely is helpful. So what are some of your goals for the rest of 2025 and going into 2026?
My primary goal is to continue to work on the business, not in the business. My plan is to really transition from building a caseload to building an organization. I want to be able to open up other Crystal's counseling locations. We're currently working with a staff member in Crystal River, building their caseload so that we hopefully will be able to open up a location there. And then I have a business advisor right now looking at Volusia County.
Oh.
So we're hopefully going to slowly, if Crystal River goes well, then we're going to open up that door as well.
No, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Volusia County.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was born at DeLand Hospital, so that's I was That's where my mom was a social worker in Daytona, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I love Daytona.
My mom graduated from UCF back when it was you can't finish. So yeah, she was like, I struggled. She was like, I was praying every semester that my classes weren't going to get closed out, that I could actually finish my degree.
Yep.
It was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. I love it. I was actually hoping to go to UCF whenever I was going to college, but they don't have, dietetics. There's only like 4 schools in the state that have that degree. Yeah, it's not very much. It's very little. I ended up going to UNF, so I went to Jacksonville.
Okay.
That's where I graduated. It actually has one of the better programs, actually, compared to like UF, and a lot of people, UF and USF, I mean not USF, FSU were all like, oh my God, you go to like the better school, and I'm like, I do? I'm like, okay, sure, if you say so, if you like it, great.
Yep.
So towards the end of my podcast, what I always ask everybody, if somebody's looking to do what you do, what piece of advice would you give them?
Do it. Don't wait. Had I opened up the private practice years ago when I really started to think about it, I would have been able to help a lot more individuals. So I think that's my big push is don't wait. It doesn't make sense to, even if it's just small, seeing a couple clients here and there, just starting an LLC, doing something smaller.
Being okay with doing it out of your house?
Yes. Yes. Being okay on a laptop and a prayer.
I just want to kind of do a quick overview before we wrap up on what service you should provide, and then how the best way for people to reach you if they're looking for counseling services.
So we work with all individuals starting from age 5 all the way up to elderly. We offer both in person here in the Ocala area, in Crystal River, as well as online for the state of Florida. We specialize in children who struggle with ADHD, autism, school-related concerns. We also work with individuals with anxiety, depression. We work with couples, marriage counseling. We offer addiction counseling, and I think that's it.
It's a lot.
I think that's, we work on like self-esteem, all of those things that kind of go into kind of the anxiety realm. The best way to reach us is to call our main line, which is 352-615-0144, or check out our website, because that will bring you right into the portal to check the insurance.
Do you have a place where they can view the different counselors, or how does that work? I'm just curious.
Yep. So our website offers all of that. Every therapist that's interested in having their information and building their caseload is out there. Their bio's there, what they specialize in. All their photos are out there as well, so an individual is able to pick and choose. We also have the ability to help a client that's walking through the door pick the right therapist. So it's not just whoever has the most availability, it's making sure you have the right fit for the therapist. And that's something that I do once the insurance check comes back. So typically what happens is they'll call in or provide the insurance information. That takes about 72 hours to provide the information back from the insurance carrier. We reach out, we let them know what the insurance covers, and then from there we identify the best therapist if they haven't identified one for themselves.
Okay, perfect. That's what I need to know. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and
awesome.
sharing your story.
Thank you.
You're my pleasure. All right, guys. I hope you guys check back for another great episode. Thanks so much.